Welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You with Tammy Nicole, the podcast dedicated to you loving and putting yourself first. Others have come first in your life for years, and you know it's time for that to change. You're about to be empowered to set healthy boundaries, confidently have hard conversations, unapologetically put yourself first, and live the peaceful life you deserve. Remember, self-love is essential, and loving yourself sets the stage for every other love in your life. So get ready to embrace self-love like never before with your host, Coach Tammy Nicole.
Hey, it's Transformation Tuesday over at Loving Me Before I Love You. You guys, y'all know how we are. I think a lot of times when we are giving people our descriptions, when someone asks you, who are you? The first thing we typically do is name our titles. We name, oh, I'm a mom. I am the CEO, or I am the VP, or, I do X, Y, and Z. It's always a title. But the real question is, are you more than that? Or is that all you have? Because technically speaking, you are not your titles. However, you have trained your brain to think that the titles resemble and actually tell the story of who you are. When technically it just describes a couple of things that you like to do, a couple of things that you may be good at, but who you are really resonates with your character. Are you kind? Are you generous? Are you loving? Not, are you a mom? Now you may think, because I'm a mom, I am kind, I am generous, I am loving because I have someone to take care of. But the reality is, just because you had a kid does not change who you are. That we hope it does, but it doesn't always work that way. And so today we are going to talk and we're going to ask and answer the question, are you more than your titles? Now, I do have a guest with me. And because I always have a guest, that's just like what we do. And the title is Coach Tammy Nicole and Friends, not just Tammy Nicole. So I always have someone that's going to bring insight, fun, and a little bit of in your face, no, you did that wrong. Or in your face, you did that right. And today is no different. I do have Miss Lena Wilson with me. She is a transformation coach. She is here to help bring light to our subject matter. And I'm excited that she's here. Lena, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Coach Tammy Nicole. I'm so delighted to be here.
I'm excited. So that's the subject of Am I My Titles? Always, it's kind of near and dear to me because when you think about it from all aspects of life, if you go get a job, if you are talking to someone just on a general interview process, the number one question someone always asks you is, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And our number one response is always the things that we do, the titles that we've had or the titles that we have, but we're so much more than that. And so when I saw that you were a transformation coach, that you were out there helping women understand how to move and transition through life, I was like, this right here is right for her. So I am so excited that you're joining. And like my very first question, right, is why did you choose being a transformation coach? And explain to us what that really means to you and for others before we dive a little deeper.
Okay. All right. Well, so good to be here. So I chose being a transformation coach. I'll try to summarize this because the journey is a little long, but I was in corporate HR for 25 years and kind of in line with what we're talking about today, I got to a point when I turned 50 where I was like, I need to define who I am.
She said she was 50, y'all. I know y'all don't see 50 nowhere near on this screen.
Well,
but okay.
I'm not 50. I'm actually 52 now.
even okay, we're gonna get back there. But okay, we need all the skincare tips and everything else too. But go
Yeah, so a couple of years ago when I turned 50, it really was a defining moment. And I really started to think about who I was. And when you have situations happen in your life, such as my daughter getting ready to go off to college, it really starts to make you think, right? Like, okay, mom's role is shifting. What does that
Mhm.
mean for me and my identity? But I became a transformation coach, a transition coach, transformation coach. Really, at the age of 50, I started to have this epiphany and really started to think about what do I want the rest of my life to look like? I have more
Mhm.
years behind me than I do ahead of me. And I decided that corporate just wasn't in alignment with what I wanted to create, the impact I wanted to make. And so I made a decision at that point that I was going to pursue entrepreneurship full time. I had been doing it part time, but decided I wanted to do it full time. And I arrived at transition coaching because in coaching mid level managers in the corporate space, I realized that a lot of people struggle with change and transition.
Mhm.
We know that our brains are wired to resist change, but even in reorgs and changing roles and navigating personal life and professional life, people just have a hard time with that. And
They do.
fear shows up in such a big way. And if you don't manage it, it paralyzes you, right? And
Right.
so I realized there was a need to really help and guide people through transitions. And as a result of that, I created a blueprint to really walk people through that. So I got here because it is kind of a culmination of my corporate experience, but
Mhm.
then I have been a coach at heart for just as long, like about 30 years. And this is kind of my sweet spot where I support people in navigating how do you get from this place to this place?
Mhm.
People conceptually know what they want to do, but they don't always know how to get
Ow.
there. And if they know how to get there, somewhere along the way, fear shows up and it derails their entire plan and they don't
Mhm.
execute.
Right.
And so it's been my own journey. I have gone through a lot of different transitions in my life, from divorce to relocating to about to go through empty nesting. And then of course leaving corporate is a big deal after 32 years, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And so navigating my own transitions and recognizing there's a need, that's how I landed at, man, this really feels good to help people get to their destinations and not just help them get to where they want to go, but helping them uncover what they really want to do. Because sometimes people don't even know what they want or what their idea looks like until you ask them and they're like, I never thought about that. No one has ever asked me that, right? Like,
Right.
what makes you happy? And so just helping people to live their very best lives does require some change. It's uncomfortable, and I help them navigate that successfully.
Yes. And you know what? When you just ask that, like, what makes you happy? So that's even like how I got started in the self love side of things, because I feel like people don't know who they are,
Mhm.
right? They are in what we call the rigor mortis of life, just doing things from a habit perspective.
Right.
It's routine, it's routine, it's routine. I'm supposed to do this. It's the only way I can survive and live life. Like, there's no genuine connection of passion to understand their inner side. And so for me, it was like, you know what? You need to help them see them,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Absolutely. And then
And
we shift and we grow and we evolve, right? So who we are at 30 is not who we are at 50, you know? And so
facts,
even recognizing that there's an evolution that's taking place, it's ongoing that we are growing and becoming.
facts. And I think a lot of times when we think about evolution, we don't really think about evolution. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? When I say
Mhm.
that, like,
Mhm.
it's like, yes, I turn another year every year. Like, I get older every year, but
Mhm.
I don't think about the change that comes with that
Right.
new year of new
Yeah.
life. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, it's just another day. You ever hear someone that does not celebrate their birthday, who don't think that their birthday actually matters? And you go and you be like, oh, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. Like, oh, it's just another day. What are you doing for your birthday? Oh, it's just another day. Like, there's no emphasis on
Yeah.
celebrating them, their life, who they are, the ever changing things that happen in
Right.
turning another age and turning a new year. So
Yeah.
I 100% agree that it's
Yeah.
definitely it's a transition that nobody ever really likes to address. They just
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you touched on something. I think that even when we go through different life experiences, like, like I talked about going through my divorce, and we don't realize how those experiences change us.
They
And so
impact you greatly.
absolutely, absolutely. And so unless you do some deep inner work, the self-awareness is not there. And because the self-awareness is not there, then you can't really have the self-love to the magnitude that you teach on, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Self-awareness is the very first step in my process. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if we don't get past this, we don't go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand how you show up, the space that you feel, and the capacity that you have before you can ever move forward in anything else,
Yeah.
right? You have to know you. You have to pull back the layers. When I went through my divorce, like everybody always asks me, why did you get a divorce? Like, how was that process? And, I honestly got a divorce because I discovered myself. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we don't even talk about that. Like, we don't talk about what changes even when you discover you.
Yeah.
Because when you learn to discover yourself, when you learn that self-awareness, when you learn who you are, you no longer operate in the old you. So that upsets a lot of people because they're no longer able to use you with your no boundary self. You know what I mean? You had no boundaries. You was just doing willy-nilly things, allowing the walkovers and the
Yeah.
disrespect and the disrespect. Like, you were just allowing it because you had equated love to the chaos, right?
Right.
But when you learn who you are and you learn you decide what your worth is and you decide your value and you start to validate it and move through it, then people upset.
They are. Yeah.
Because how dare you change?
Right.
I was comfortable with who you were.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't give you permission
Right.
to stop people pleasing and incorporating me in your decisions based upon what I desire and forgetting about what you wanted.
Yeah.
So that person is gone. And now it's like, wait, what?
We no longer have anything in common.
So, no one talks about that, how you lose friends. You may not even talk to certain family members because everybody does not know how to navigate that transition. They don't know how to navigate the change,
Yeah.
but they gave you a name, right? They gave you a title and that you were living up to. But we are more than
Yeah.
our titles.
And you triggered something, for me. So I was adopted, and my
Mm,
parents told me I was adopted when I was 12. And I went through a lot of identity issues,
hmm
right? Because I feel like what we're talking about today is so rooted in you knowing your identity, which is very separate from your title, right?
Facts.
Like, titles can shift, titles can change, but if you know who you are, then that is the core of who you are. That doesn't change. And so I struggled with my identity because I didn't know my biological parents. And that really went on like into my adult life.
hmm
And I struggled to really love myself on a deeper level until I dealt with that whole abandonment and rejection issue that I
hmm
had. And so I say that to say that sometimes we don't know how because we haven't dealt with the trauma, right, of things that may have happened to us in our past. And so that was me. That was definitely me. I just didn't know what the concept of that looked like because in my mind I was wearing the identity of rejection.
hmm
And so when you wear the identity of rejection, that's where the people pleasing comes in and all of these unhealthy behaviors.
Absolutely.
So for many of us, it's a journey based on what we've had to overcome. And that was definitely me.
Absolutely. You saying that honestly made me go, I think we have what I call a connector. And when you study this level of things, like when you study like self-love and you study people understanding who they are, a lot of us that don't love ourselves, the one thing that I find to be in common across the board is abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
And you saying what you just said really solidified it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's it. Everybody is experiencing abandonment. It doesn't matter what level of abandonment it is,
Right.
but all of us have this thing of not being chosen.
Yeah. And this need to belong. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we weren't chosen. And now it's like, I need to be chosen. I need someone to pick me. I always see being a kid and they're choosing teams for the kickball game for PE. You have two team captains and you're always the last one getting picked. Like that's the visual that I always see when I talk about the understanding of who you are and why you struggle with loving you, because you always felt like you needed to perform in order to be chosen. I perform, you pick. I perform, you pick. I do this, you do that. And you equated that level of love to that exact experience. And I think a lot of times we don't, like, not until I'm like, yeah, I didn't think about, when individuals are adopted and they're in this different type of space, when you grow up without a father and you always wanted the love of a dad. Like I do a lot of daddy issue things and stuff of that nature. But when we literally talk about like being more than a title, all of this like comes up. It just like comes up to the surface because it's like, it's been so pushed down, so stuffed that we don't really think about it. So he's like, yeah, your identity is a part of this conversation.
Yeah, and your parents can either solidify that for you or they can fuel the struggle, right? So even though I was very fortunate to be adopted into a two-parent home, I was also raised by two parents who were not very affectionate. And my dad was definitely academically driven, and he showed love through material things. So when someone is showing you love through material things and you're not getting that affection, you start to feel, okay, well, if I do this, then I get some recognition, I get some validation, right? So even how you're raised and how you're nurtured has such a big impact in you learning who you are and being comfortable, right? Being comfortable. And I think sometimes people get all the way into their deep adult life and they've not taken the time to really get to the root of where this need for all of this validation comes from. And, and a lot of times it goes all the way back to their childhood.
Yeah. The need for validation, I think, is what I call innate, right? It's something that literally comes when you come out the womb.
Yeah.
The
like
validation,
Maslow's, right? Hierarchy of needs. Yeah.
Man, it's an automatic thing that happens. So you automatically learn that things must be validated based upon, I cry, X, Y, and Z happens. So, you understand that give and take perspective. But then when you grow up and, it's like learning how to have a relationship. We don't get taught how to have a relationship. We're just thrown into it. And whatever the dynamics of the relationship you have with your parents that then transcends into how you have a relationship with friends, it's like there's no real teaching, right? You're 5 years old, you go to school for the first time and it's like, go talk to them. And you're like, do what? Like, that's how you make friends. You just talk to people, and then you're not taught about, well, what if they mistreat me or talk to me wrong? Or, like you don't learn how to navigate the conflict. It's tell a teacher.
Right. Yeah.
Those things teach us different dynamics and it don't go away in our adulthood. We still revert back to those things. That's why having relationships a lot of times is difficult for us to have hard conversations. We don't know how to have the hard conversations and stay authentic in ourselves. Like I don't have to be mean and, disrespectful to tell you how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think as you were talking, I thought about people, because they lack confidence in themselves and who they are, because you said authenticity, right? And I think people who lack confidence in just who they are, the title now becomes the mask, right? That they can hide behind. And so, you tell me that you're a doctor. I'm like, oh, you're a doctor, but your personal life is just all jacked up, right? But you can
Facts.
hide behind the mask of the titles.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of people unfortunately do that. And we also live in a society that does kind of, praise you for having the title, so to speak. And I would say maybe more so corporate, right? Because like I worked in the banking industry.
Mm.
And so the moment you get there, it's like, okay, I was an officer. And then they're like, okay, your next ladder is an assistant VP, and then a VP and a senior VP. And I just remember even my own journey was always about, okay, well, how do I get to the senior VP level? Not like it's never about how can you add value to the organization, right? Just being where you are. It's always about, well, your peers are getting promoted. So now you start to feel this pressure, that I need to acquire this title as well in order to be seen on the same level of value.
Yep.
And so I think we're just in an environment a lot of times, whether it's corporate or even other spaces, where your title is what you feel you have to define you. But the more that you get confident in who you are and you are comfortable with that, whether that, even if you're quirky or you're different, but once you learn to get so comfortable with who you are, the title is just a bonus, but your identity is really what matters most, that will carry you regardless of what transitions or change that you go through.
100%. 100%. Like while you were talking, the thought that was coming to my mind is like, God said he'll make your name great. And making my name great means that I need to be a certain person, right? It's like, who am I though? He didn't say he'll make my title great. He said he'll make my name great. And my name, that's all I need, right? The letters behind it don't make or break me. People ask me all the time, how many degrees do you have? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm technically working on degree number 4, but that doesn't make me, right? It can add to me, but it's not who I am. It's the things that I do within it. So it's like, we have depended so heavy on a title. And I agree with you that we have fallen into a space of hiding behind it because it looks good. And we don't think we look good, but that looks good. And so I'll rather do that. Let's put that on the forefront. I can think back to a story talking with some friends, and they were, she was like trying to date this guy, and he went out, and they went out on a like a double date or something. And the gentleman only talked about himself, but it was like his titles, his accolades, his da-da-da-da. And it was a turnoff. Right? But it was a turnoff because he wasn't self-aware, because he didn't know himself. He thought that the things that he did or the things that he had accomplished would give him worthiness from other people. And it's like, no, sir, no, that doesn't work. Right. So the very thing that you think is giving you a push or a leg up is the very thing that's bringing you down, because no one knows you.
Right. It's also the reason why when you lose that thing, you feel tremendously devastated, right? And you almost feel, which is why I deal with grief through transitions quite a bit, because when people lose the very thing that defines who they are because they haven't taken the time to really know who they are, then it's a devastating moment for them on seasons. And they don't even know how to navigate. Well, first of all, in many cases, they don't even realize that they're grieving the thing that they were hiding behind, right? You were hiding behind. So you lose the title, and now you're like, who am I, right? And you start to question so many different things. And it's a grieving process. And so even when I go through my blueprint that I mentioned at the beginning, there is a space that we talk about your identity and who you are and your mindset around that. And you probably won't be surprised, but there are so many people who just they don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. They don't know. They just live life by default, right?
Yep.
They just live life by default. And until you decide this is what I want my life to look like, then that in many cases forces you to become the person to make that happen. But if you just always live life by default and you hide behind these titles, then you really just almost become a prisoner to being an inauthentic person, to be honest. You're just defined by what you do and not who you are.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts. So now that we've gotten to this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we change it? How do we decide? Well, not even how do we decide, because that's what my first thought is. It's a decision, right? You must decide that you want to know who you are behind and beyond your titles.
Mm-hmm.
So you've made that decision. You're like, okay, I'm going to stop playing small. I'm going to stop acting like I don't know, that I'm just these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? What steps do I take to get beyond my titles, to see me?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question.
I know, right?
But here's what I will say. I think in order to see yourself, you have to really understand where is your identity rooted. That's the first thing. So when you say, who am I? And we know that, people have different beliefs, right? So for me, my identity is rooted in Christ. For other people, you have to decide what does that look like for you, right? Mm-hmm. And how does that align with where you are today? And in my case, who God says I am. So remember earlier I said, hey, my identity was really deeply rooted in rejection and abandonment. But God says I'm loved. And God says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So there's a disconnect with who I am and who I know I was created to be. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the first things that needs to happen is really figure out, who am I outside of the titles based on how I was created? Mm-hmm. And what does my creator say about me? Whoever you define as your creator.
Correct.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very important step. And then once you start identifying the gaps, because you will start to see the gaps, I think it goes back to what I said earlier about getting to the root of why do you define your identity by your titles? Where did that start for you? Mm-hmm. And sometimes people have to go through therapy. They have to come see you and really talk through, hey, where did this originate? Because we have a tendency, I think we're getting better overall, but mental health was something that we just was so taboo. And seeing a therapist and getting help and getting support was not something that was always very common for people. And there are some deep-rooted issues that people carry all the way into their adult life. Facts. And that is why they show up the way they do. Mm-hmm. And so I think the second piece is getting to the root of, why do I assign so much of my identity to my titles? If you take away the titles, what am I afraid of? Right. Right. What am I ashamed of? Sometimes shame and guilt and scars of our past. Mm-hmm. Even people who, like a lot of people, women who've gone through a divorce. For a long time, I didn't want to tell people that I was divorced because just even saying that out loud made me feel like, ooh, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. And we don't want to wear what we deem to be the bad titles. Right. We want to showcase the titles that we deem to be in high esteem, right? And gives us that positive reinforcement from other people. So I would say getting to the root of that. But then I do think, Tammy, Nicole, there is this deep soul work that you have to do around self-love.
Hey, hope you're feeling the love in today's episode. We'll pick back up where we left off in a moment. First, we're excited to share that Tammy has a collection of self-love t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and journals for you to express how much you love yourself to the world. From comfy hoodies to motivational mugs, there's something for everyone. While you're listening to today's show, feel free to browse the full collection at IamTammyNicole.com. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get back into today's show.
I just don't think that self-love is one of those things where you're like, you know what? I'm going to work on my self-love for a week and I'm going to get this together.
Oh no, it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah. It gets to the core of who you are. And there will be things that you will discover about yourself that you like and things that you don't like.
Facts.
That's the reality.
Facts.
You will also uncover that you settled in a lot of areas that you should not have settled in. Right. And I think once you start doing that deep soul work, which is really where I think everything starts to come together, you have to be committed to that journey. You have to be committed to the journey because it gets hard. It can get really hard, like even me having to deal with my rejection and abandonment issues. That was hard work for me. And that only came to light after my divorce, right? That came to light after my divorce. And so you have to be willing to do the deep soul work that will take you on a journey that can be quite uncomfortable.
Oh, it's always uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That is like not even a option to not be uncomfortable, right? Because if you stayed comfortable, you would stay where you are.
Right.
Being uncomfortable allows for the shift. It allows for the change to actually come in. So when I even work with women and I'm going through the different stages of how we get to where you are, I don't even want to call it coasting, but when you get to a level of like, you know what, I do understand myself. I am fully self-aware. I know how I'm showing up. If something pops up that is like reminding me of the past, I can check it. I always tell people change does not mean that the past is erased.
Right.
It just simply means you know how to navigate it.
Right.
You know what it is when it shows up.
Right.
So when you get triggered, when you have things that pop up and be like, oh, wait, hold up. You can readjust yourself. You can address it because you are aware and you know how to handle it. It does not mean that things just poof, be gone. Oh, I addressed it. I understood it. Let me throw that in the basket. It's to never come back up again.
Yeah.
No, it's going to pop up because you don't control other people. You only control yourself.
Right.
So because people are not walking around and because you are not walking around with a sign, even though I thought, somebody said this a while ago that we probably should walk around with side effects, like who we are, the side effects of us need to be like we do food on the nutrition box, like little thing to say, this is what I will do to you. This is what I come with. This is, but we don't do that. So they're not reading your side effects and saying, let me not do this to trigger this person because they have gone through X, Y, and Z. They are simply being themselves, whatever that is, and it's up to you to navigate. But not knowing who you are makes that difficult. It makes you lash out. It makes you have all of these, what I call tumultuous relationships. And you'd be like, why do I keep finding the same man with a different name? Because, our relationships are built on who you are. You get and attract who you are, not who you want to be. And a lot of times we really think that because we are thinking about this thing and we are writing a list of what we want. I always challenge people, stop writing a list of what you want and write the list of who you are to be and what you want. Because if you write the list about yourself, when you start seeing that you aren't that person, and when you start learning that you need to make the changes, then you'll understand why the one that you wrote down, all these little list of my ideal person hasn't shown up, because you haven't shown up.
Yeah, that's so true. That's good. That's really good. Yeah, and I think when we don't show up as our authentic selves, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to have life's best because we settle in some form or fashion because we are we're operating under this mask and these false perceptions of who we really are. And so We don't have the right boundaries in place. We haven't
Correct.
defined our goals, our desires. And so we tend to settle for things and spaces and people that don't necessarily align with what we deserve. But because we're not taking the time to do the work, then it feels easier to just settle. And I like to think of self-love as a daily decision.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
it's a daily decision that I'm going to love myself more every day. And it doesn't mean that there's perfection. There's never going to be perfection, and there will be misses along the way. But you have to make a commitment, and you have to be very unapologetic about that. You can't waver in your boundaries, because if you waver in your boundaries, then you start to fall back into that space that you're trying to pull yourself out of and moving yourself closer to who you really are. But it's definitely a commitment to the journey and staying on the journey, regardless of how hard it is, how uncomfortable it is. And I think you started off saying that you lose friends along the way, and big facts, because
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Now,
people just they don't understand, and they don't have to. They don't have to
no,
understand, but you owe it to yourself to be true to yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times though, when we hear the word self-love, we think it's a solo process. It's not a solo process.
Mm-hmm.
You are to have a supportive community around you while you're doing it. You just need to choose them wisely.
Mm-hmm.
We're not meant, nor were we ever created to do this life by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not supposed to do it by ourselves, hello, that's inclusive of your self-love journey. That's not, I know it says self, and there are going to be moments where you are to be separated and isolated for a time or a period, but it is not to be done completely alone,
Yeah.
because self-love is, like you mentioned, it's a lifelong journey. It's not a destination. It is a journey.
And you need
So,
accountability. Yeah.
and you need someone who's going to keep you in that space of not bagging backwards and not going the other direction. No U-turns. We keep straight. We may go around curves, but we keep, moving forward. We don't go backwards.
Yeah.
And so having that healthy support system is 100% important. It is not an option. It is a mandatory, because you need someone that's going to say, hey, remember what you committed to, because it's easy to fall back in comfort.
Very easy. Very easy. And that's, that's kind of natural, what our brains will try to default to what's familiar, right? And when you talk about support, it made me think about a couple of days ago, I had this epiphany. I was talking to my best friend, and I like to cheerlead a lot of people around me. Always my husband, my daughter, like my friends. Like, I love to support other people. And I just had this epiphany that I don't really have the same level of intention when it comes to celebrating my own accomplishments. Doesn't have to be big. I just kind of overlook it. I kind of gloss over it. And that it made me pause. It made me think, like, well, why do I do that? Right? Because it comes back to, well, you're just as worthy as everyone else that you're celebrating, right? But is there something that prevents you from celebrating yourself with the same level of intention? And my girlfriend kind of brought it to my attention, like, no, we need to fix this, right? And I'm going to hold you accountable to making sure that you do it, and that even I am more aware so that I do it with you. But if I don't have that type of friend that aligns with that, or is competing with me, or is jealous of me, which is what you said about making sure you're very intentional and selective about who's part of the support group, then I don't have anyone holding me accountable to still honor myself and to honor the things I need to do to continue to amplify my self-love.
Facts.
Yeah.
And they, I know we've been talking about like your titles and stuff like that. They too fall in that line as well. And you mentioned alignment, and alignment for me is super important for any and every relationship. Do you align with who I am and where I'm going? If you don't, you can't jump on this ship. This train does not stop for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So that support system, very necessary.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
really like optional. It's mandatory.
Mhm.
Because self-love, man, I eat and breathe it every day. Like you said, you make a decision every day to love yourself a little more. I think we have glossed over self-love to be this artificial thing of
Mhm.
self-care. And self-care, though, as important as it is not self-love. And I
Yeah.
always like hone in on that. Yes, go get your hair done, go get your nails done, that massage, take the solo vacation, do all those things. But all those things without knowing who you are is nothing.
Yeah.
Okay? That was just money spent.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think there are some parts that are not so pretty when we're doing the work around self-love, right? So when you talk about titles, and peeling all the layers back, yeah, and I think sometimes that's the piece we gloss over with the whole self-care. Like, oh, like you said, right? Because that feels nice and light. But there's some heavy work back to the soul piece that comes with self-love, which I agree with you. I think a lot of times we don't really put enough emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the piece that really shifts you into becoming who you need to be or becoming who you really are.
Right.
I think the other thing that came to mind was sometimes people feel, like you said, because it has the word self in it, they just like, okay, well, I'm in this self-love era, I'm cutting everybody off, right?
And they do that. And they do that all the time.
Self-love.
All the time.
Yeah.
And they blame it on a self-love journey. And I say, there are people that you will need to cut off. Don't get it twisted, because they're not in alignment of where you're going.
Definitely.
And who you're becoming. But to do it just on GP, like to do it like, you in the past, you was a part of the old me, so I'm gonna let you go. And it's like, but they can still be a part of your journey. Like, you never know what their purpose is, and you will find out their purpose when you discover who you are. But until you've done that level of work, let them be right where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know, the minute you tell them this is the journey you're on, and they're like, oh, okay, and they stop calling, cool, let that call be gone, But if they are continuing to call and continuing to encourage you, like, oh, that's cool, maybe I need to do it for myself. Like, you can also become a light to other people. We are to light other candlesticks. We're not just to stand and burn alone. So you should not be cutting people off just for the sake of doing so. You should definitely be connecting with people that are on the same journey. That alignment is super important. And I think when we talk about, am I my titles? It's like, is that all that I am? Am I just your friend?
Right.
Are you a friend to yourself?
Right. Yeah.
So everything when it comes to self-love, to me, everything starts and ends with me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It does not mean that nobody else is included. It just, when you think about the circle, the circle has a starting point and an end point, and it's always the same point.
It's always, yeah. And I agree. And I think a good way to really figure out where you are is, how am I when I'm alone? Can I even be alone?
Man, when I tell you,
feel and look like.
When I tell you, so the journal that I just released, that's it. That's the beginning of it. Like, we talk about the roots, and then we go through the stages of a date, of literally dating yourself the same way you would date someone else. There is an alignment. There is a parallel that shows you when you're dating someone else versus when you're dating yourself. And all of the stages are the exact same. But because we never went through it for us, we struggle with going through it with other people. And so it's like, just do this process so that, one, you get a relationship with yourself that's solid, so that when you're in a relationship with other people, you know who you are and don't lose yourself in the process. I think the worst thing that ever happens in relationships is when you lose yourself. You get with a person, you lose yourself and you don't know who you are. And then you divorce them or break up with them. And then you like, now that they're no longer here, who am I? And you don't know. And it's hard to figure it out. And you're like struggling, like, oh my goodness. Before dating them, before marrying them, I used to love to go to the beach, but they were cabin people. They didn't like to go to, so we never went. And now you no longer like going to the beach because you wasn't like, it's as little and small and simple as that. But going to the beach is what brought you peace. It brought you happiness. And when you lose your happiness in someone else, you lose you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a hard place. That's a really hard place. That's definitely a hard place. Yeah, I when I got divorced, one of the things, I don't know that I would say I lost myself, but I had a lot of self-love work to do, a lot. And one of the things that I did was really figuring out, what do I love and what really makes me happy. That was one of the things. And I literally like created this map, which is, I live in Florida. And me living in Florida was part of what I wanted to do, because I realized I thrive where there's sun and there's beaches. And that's what I love. I lived in Virginia before, where there was snow and all this stuff. And yeah, I did it for a long time, almost 20 years. But that wasn't where I was married during that time. So that's kind of where we were. But once that marriage ended, I'm like, what do I really love? What do I really want? And I just mapped that out. And if I could say anything to encourage people who are listening, it's you have the power to define what you want your life to look like. But you're not going to get there until you figure out, who am I? Who you really are. And once you know who you are and you've gained that confidence in your own authentic nature, you can really create the life that you absolutely love and that desire. But sometimes people get stuck along the way because they're trying to get to a destination, not realizing, I need to figure out who I am first. I need to figure out what that looks like for me. And sometimes we're conditioned to believe things that people told us, or environments that we were in. And so we take on those identities. And that's where the hard work comes in. Like, just because, your mom said this about you doesn't mean that's who you really are.
Fact.
And so I think people get very uncomfortable when they have to do that hard work, and sometimes people run and they don't face it. But you owe it to yourself to do the hard work so that you can be your best self and live your best life.
And not your titles.
And not your titles. Absolutely. The titles are just masks.
Yeah, that's exactly. So when you say, who am I beyond my titles? Am I still my exactly. Your titles is a mask. And it's time to take it off. Halloween is over.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. and that's not to minimize anybody who you have great success and accreditations that you've earned. I mean, like you said, you're getting ready to do your fourth. I think you said almost.
Yeah, I'm getting my doctorate. Yes,
you're getting your doctorate, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations. Right? That's phenomenal. I am not that girl, but congratulations, right? But who are you outside of being a mom, an employee, a corporate, who are you? And I think if you always ask yourself that question on a consistent basis, then that's the reality check that helps you to stay connected to who you are.
Facts. Matter of fact, a part of the program for me is you have to ask that question every day. Who am I today?
Who am I today?
Yes.
Wow. That's good.
And that is a part of the process. And the reason you do that is because every day you may be someone different, and you are stacking the different things that you are so that you can know who you are completely, right? But who am I today? How am I showing up today? What are the things that are going to make me happy today?
Yeah. Who do
Tomorrow's
I want to be for? Yeah.
Tomorrow's not promised, So you have to be grounded and staying focused on the moment. I have enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. I will say
Likewise.
that. I want you to, if you had to give the people 3 things that will help them transition well, that would help them understand that they're not their titles, like beyond the title, what would you give them? And then tell them how they can find you.
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say is that, remember, your brain is designed to keep you safe. Fear will always show up when you are getting ready to do something that's new, that's uncomfortable, that's unfamiliar. And so I want you to feel the fear, and I want you to do the work anyway to really get to know who you are and uncover who you are outside of the titles that you have. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that you have to believe, and the more that you love yourself, that you are worthy of living a beautiful and amazing and fantastic life. There are so many people who just don't believe that. And you are what you believe, and your life is a product, a lot of it in terms of what you believe. And so when you do the work, part of doing that work is also accepting how worthy you are of living a beautiful life. I don't care where you are. You're never too old. It's never too late for you to decide, I am going to love myself to the deepest parts that I can, and I'm going to live a beautiful life. In terms of transition, what I would say is that change is not easy. Changing who you are, changing your habits, your patterns, your routines, your environment, sometimes your relationships, sometimes those things are necessary in order for you to become who you really need to become. The only title that I agree that we should all wear is becoming, because we're all always growing and becoming. Like Coach Tammy Nicole said, it is a daily journey.
Absolutely.
But understanding that change will make you uncomfortable, but change is necessary. Change is necessary. And you get to decide if you're going to live by default every day, or whether you're going to be brave enough and courageous enough to go through the transitions that will get you to knowing yourself better and to living a more fruitful and aligned life to who God created you to be. You can find me on lenawilson.com. That's my website, and everything is there. And on social media, I am on different platforms under Coach Lena Wilson.
Awesome. You guys heard it here. You heard all of her suggestions and recommendations, and I think you should definitely take them into account, because knowing who you are is the most important. When you love yourself, you are able to love others. You are not allowed to love other people when you do not love yourself. Whatever you're giving them, it's not love. It's whatever you've created in your mind, whatever you think society has told you to do, but it is not genuine love, because it's impossible to give love to others that you don't already possess for yourself. I always tell you, you cannot pour from an empty cup. It is your job to fill your cup, and the overflow goes to everyone else. Remember, if you want coaching, you hit me at coaching@IamTammyNicole.com. All of my social media is at Coach Tammy Nicole. Remember this, love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus. Happy Tuesday, and we'll catch y'all next week.
That's a wrap on another episode of Loving Me Before I Love You. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to show your support by subscribing and leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Stay connected with Tammy. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and TikTok at Coach Tammy Nicole. If you like to work with Tammy or have any questions you'd like her to answer, please head over to www.IamTammyNicole.com. Until next time, always remember to love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus.